of a better life, a better relation, more loving, more thoughtful, more kind, more tolerant relations with life around me, with all the other souls that were inhabiting this earth with me. That's really what it is. It was interesting. In the beginning, my motivation was very much a part. It was very much a matter of the relation of God to life. As I went on, I lost interest in God, and what I'm really concerned about.
Did you lose interest in the question of relation with life, or interest in God?
No, with relation with God, and what my motivation became more and more a matter of living in accordance with what Baba not only told me to do, but also in a way that would be pleasing to him. That's really what it boils down to. And God realization, well, Baba says we all get there eventually. Personally, that is not of interest to me. It's something that remote, and then the vague future, I assume. I assume that is so. Yeah. So that was the first day with Baba, and again, as I said, I became aware more and more of my happy absorption in this being that to me, when I say he was beautiful, it wasn't beauty. I didn't think of beauty, but I thought of manliness, of strength of purpose. There was no question that if you asked me, well, what was my impression of Meher Baba, I could only say that, hey, he couldn't have been anyone else but God, because there was something so extraordinary about him, so completely more than anything I'd ever encountered, no matter how much I may have liked people or certain people.
So you can't define that extraordinariness, what you felt, something different?
There was a grandeur about it. Okay. There was, but yet very natural. It wasn't that he held himself aloof or upright and as it were, look how wonderful I am, how great I am. Nothing like that. And yet there was, I have to sort of say, yes, he was beautiful, but wasn't the beauty that I had thought of in the beginning, not the beauty that you think in terms of a woman. It was a beauty in terms of a completeness, in terms of all the qualities one could think of that made up an extraordinary man. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you felt he's something superhuman rather than just a human.
Yes, and yet at the same time he seems so human.
Very natural. So natural. And so natural, and yet that you just knew there was something else about it. So did you feel that he's compassionate father?
Never thought of it that way. Yes, now I do. Yeah. Now I realise how much I owe him. How much I can't conceive of myself other than in relation to him. Yeah, yeah. There's no question, and that how he's looked after me. How in no way did we ever go short, no matter how difficult life was, how hard it was, maybe in terms of relationships and finance and health or anything like that, and yet the way in which everything, he did look after us and looked after me. Yeah, very much.
So how long you were there in India, Bill?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Well, it was 30 days to be exact. We arrived on the 10th and left on the 30th. And over that period, yes, Dana.
Let's get into the personal interview.
The personal in the interview?
Yeah.
Right.
Are we going day by day now?
Yes.
You
Sort of.
had the first day finished.
Yes.
Second day onwards, you
Now
kept on
this-
watching Baba, how beautifully he's walking up
Second
and
day was they were settling in.
settling in.
Third day was
Interview.
Yeah, and well, actually, that day. Oh gosh, now I can't. Doesn't matter. Let's move to the interview.
yeah.
Okay. So when did you have interview roughly? Is it on the first week?
No, it was definitely within the first week. I think it was after. I think it was the 4th day.
Okay.
I think it was the 4th or 5th. I'm sorry, I could look up a record. Okay, Baba said that he would give an interview to each of us, either individually or group, and in the case of the Australians, it was as a group. There was Francis and myself and another young man who had come with us, John Ballantyne, who was drawn to Baba, but actually knew very little about him.
Through Francis?
Through Francis. He was a friend of the Rouses, of Robert and Lorna Rouse, a part of that group that were attracted and came to listen to Francis, had an interest in music, and Francis, because of his interest in music, again, it was a source, a means of drawing the young people to him. And of course then eventually to Baba. Anyway, John Ballantyne was there with us. And so the three of us came in to that west room. Baba was seated in a chair, so, like this, an armchair, sort of simple one. And there was a little carpet in front of him, and he gestured for us to sit there. And so Francis was in the middle, and John and I was on Francis's right, and John was on Francis' left. So he was, in this case, Barbara's in front of me, perhaps 2 feet, 2.5, 2 to 3 feet, quite close, definitely close. I mean, you could say with perhaps leaning forward 2 feet. And so I could see Baba very clearly. I could see the movement of his eyes and the flashes of light as they moved, and the constant changing expressions on his face, which were so vivid and so natural that I can tell you, for the first part of the interview, I had no idea that it was not his voice that was speaking, that it was actually Erich's. But I wasn't even aware of Erich. All I remember was coming in, seeing Baba, sitting down, and the first thing that Baba said was, "Francis, you've brought me 2 jewels." And all I can say is that immediately made me feel accepted and at home. Everything's all right. It never any remark. Baba never said anything in my experience, in my time with him, which you could say augmented my ego. Not in the least. But I do know that he made me feel accepted and accepted by him, embraced by him, and as it were, that presented in such a way that I was relaxed in his presence, keen to absorb, and at the same time felt very much at home with him. That wasn't very clear, but never mind. Anyway, so Baba looks at me, and when I say he looked at me, he did look at me like I'm looking at you. But you had the feeling that he looked into you. Those eyes were penetrating, and at the same time, they made you think that he was occupied with something far more vast than the speck of dust that was in front of him. He was occupied, I could say, with the universe. I don't know. All I know is that those eyes were occupied with something other than just what was in front of him. Anyway, Baba looked at me and said, "Do you love me?" And I said, "Yes, Baba." He said, "Will you obey me?" I said, "Yes." And then he asked me 3 things. And I could only remember the first one, which was, would I walk through the streets of Ahmednagar, the city that was a few miles away from where we were, naked if he told me to. And I said, "Yes, Baba." And there was no hesitation. As far as I was concerned, whatever Baba asked me, I would say yes, because I was resolved. But not stealing myself, but yes, this was it. Baba being Jesus come again, as I knew, we obeyed him. We served him, whatever he asked. So that I said, "Yes, Baba," and I don't remember. I asked Erich once, what else would he have asked me? And Erich said, "Oh, I don't know," but he might have said, "Would you be prepared to immediately go back to Australia if I told you to?" And again, whatever it was, I said yes.